Hey. Hello, guys. Hello. Let's lead. Let's lead. Law 32. Play to people's fantasies. Judgment. The truth is often avoided because it is ugly and unpleasant. Never appeal to truth and reality unless you are prepared for the anger. Prepare for the anger that comes from disenchantment. Okay. Life is so harsh and distressing that people who can manufacture romance or conjure up fantasy are like oases in the desert. Everyone flocks to them. There is great power in tapping into the fantasies of the masses. They don't want the truth. Okay. Observance of the law. The city-state of Venice was prosperous for so long that its citizens felt their small republic had destiny on its side. In the Middle Ages and High Renaissance, its virtual monopoly on trade to the east made it the wealthiest city in Europe. Under a beneficial republican government. Venetians enjoyed liberties that few other Italians had ever known. Yet in the 16th century, their fortunes suddenly changed. The opening of the New World transferred power to the Atlantic side of Europe, to the Spanish and Portuguese, and later the Dutch and English. Venice could not compete economically, and its empire gradually dwindled. The final blow was the devastating loss of a prized Mediterranean possession, the island of Cyprus, captured from Venice by the Turks in 1570. Now, noble families went broke in Venice and banks began to fold. A kind of gloom and depression settled over the citizens. They had known a glittering past, had either lived through it or had heard stories about it from their elders. The closeness of the glory years was humiliating. The Venetians have believed that the goddess fortune was only playing a joke on them and that the old days would soon return. For the time being, though, what could they do? In 1589, dreamers began to swirl around Venice of the arrival not far away from a mysterious man called E. Bragadino, a master of alchemy, a man who had won incredible wealth through his ability, it was said, to multiply gold through the use of secret substance. The rumor spread quickly because of a few years earlier, a Venetian nobleman passing through Poland had heard a learned man prophecy that Venice would recover her past glory and power if she could find a man who understood the alchemic art of manufacturing gold. And so, as word reached Venice of the gold this Bragadino possessed, he clinked gold coins continuously in his hands and golden objects filled with palace. Some began to dream through him their city would prosper again. Members of Venice's most important noble families accordingly went together to Brescia, where Bragadino lived. They toured this palace and watched in awe as he demonstrated his gold-making abilities, taking a pinch of seamlessly worthless materials and transforming it into several ounces of gold dust. The Venetian Senate prepared to debate the idea of extending an official invitation to Bragadino to stay in Venice at the city's expense. When word suddenly reached them that they were competing with the Duke of Mantua for his services, they heard of a magnificent party in Bragadino's palace for the Duke, featuring garments with golden buttons, gold watch, gold plates, and on and on. Worried they might lose Bragadino to Mantua, the Senate voted almost unanimously to invite him to Venice, promising him the mountain of money he would need to continue living in his luxurious style, but only if he came right away. Late that year, the mysterious Bragadino arrived in Venice with his piercing dark eyes under thick brows and the two enormous black mastiffs that accompanied him everywhere. He was forbidding and impressive. He took up residence in a sumptuous palace on the island of the Giudecca, with the Republic funding his banquets, his expensive clothes, and all his other whims. A kind of alchemy fever spread through Venice. On street corners, hawkers would sell gold distilling apparatus below. How to book on the subject. Everyone began to practice alchemy, everyone except Bragadino. The alchemists seemed to be in no hurry to begin manufacturing the gold that would save Venice from ruin. Strangely enough, this only increased his popularity and following. People were found from all over Europe, even Asia, to meet this remarkable man. Months went by, with gifts pouring in to Bragadino from all sides. Still, he gave no signs of a miracle that the Venetians confidently expected him to produce. Eventually, the citizens began to grow impatient, wondering if he would wait forever. At first, the senators warned them not to hurry him. He was a capricious devil who needed to be cajoled. Finally, though, the nobility began to wonder too, and the Senate came under pressure to show a return to the city's ballooning investment. But Gardino had only scorn for the doubters, but he responded to them. He said, already deposited in the cities meant the mysterious substance with which he multiplied gold. He could use this substance up all at once and produce double the gold, but the more slowly the process took place, the more it would yield. If left alone for 7 years, sealed in a casket, the substance would multiply the gold in the mint 30 times over. Most of the senators agreed to wait to reap the gold mine, but getting a promise. Others, however, were angry. 7 years of this man living royally at the public trough, and many of the calm citizens of Venice echoed these sentiments. Finally, the alchemist's enemies demanded he produced a proof of his skills, a substantial amount of gold, and soon, Lafti apparently devoted to his art, Bragadin responded that Venice, in his impatience, had betrayed him and would therefore lose his service. He left town, going first to nearby Padua, then in 1590 to Munich at the invitation of the Duke of Bavaria, who, like the entire city of Venice, had known great wealth but had fallen into bankruptcy through his own profligacy and hoped to regain his fortune through the famous alchemist's services. And so Bragadin resumed the comfortable arrangement he had known in Venice, and the same pattern repeated itself. Interpretation: the young Cypriot Mamugna had lived in Venice for several years before reincarnating himself as the alchemist Bragadino. He saw how gloom had settled to the city, how everyone was hoping for a redemption from some indefinite source, while others charlatans mastered everyday cons based on sleight of hand. Mamugna mastered human nature. With Venice as his target from the start, he traveled abroad, made some money through his alchemy scams, and then returned to Italy. Setting up shops in Brescia, and he created a reputation that he knew would spread to Venice from a distance. In fact, his aura of power would be all the more impressive. At first, Mamugna did not use vulgar demonstration to convince people of his alchemic skills. His sumptuous palace, his opulent garments, the clink of gold in his hands, all this provided a superior argument to anything rational, and this established the cycle that kept him going. His obvious wealth confirmed his reputation as an alchemist, so that patrons like the Duke of Mantua gave him money, which allowed him to live in a wealth which reinforced his reputation as an alchemist, and so on. Only once this reputation was established, the dukes and senators were fighting over it. Did he resort to the trifling necessity of a demonstration? By then, however, people were easy to deceive. They wanted to believe. The Venetian senators who watched him multiply gold wanted to believe so badly that they failed to notice the glass pipe of his sleeve, from which he slipped gold dust into his pinches of minerals, brilliant and capricious. He was the alchemist of their fantasies, and once he had created an aura like this, no one noticed his simple deceptions. Such is the power of the fantasies that take root in us. Especially in times of scarcity and decline, people rarely believe that their problems arise from their own misdeeds and stupidity. Someone or something out there is to blame. The other, the world, the gods, and so salvation comes from the outside as well. Had Bragadino arrived in Venice armed with a detailed analysis of the reason behind the city's economic decline and of the hard-nosed steps that it would take to turn things around, he would have been scorned. The reality was too ugly and the solution too painful. Mostly the kind of hard work that the citizens' ancestors had mustered to create an empire. Fantasy, on the other hand, in this case the romance of alchemy, was easy to understand and infinitely more palatable. To gain power, you must be a source of pleasure for those around you. And pleasure comes from playing to people's fantasies. Never promise a gradual improvement through hard work. Rather, promise the moon the great and certain transformation, the path of gold. No man need despair of gaining converts to the most extravagant hypothesis who has art enough to represent it in favorable colors. David Hume, 1776. Okay, that's it, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.